Hello and welcome to another episode of Alta Heron. My name is Rob Runacres and I'm here with my friend Hans Jørgenlund, who's going to introduce tonight's topic.
Yes, today we will actually do an analysis of one whole fight. Earlier we have done analysis with specific topics like setting up the attack or closing the distance, but today we will analyze one rapier fight actually, and it's a rapier fight from Swordfish. It's the fight between Daniel Varela, right, and Andreas Isaksson. So it's Daniel is from Spain and Andreas is from Sweden. It's going to be quite an interesting fight. They have two completely different styles, and I think we also should mention a little bit about what we think about rapier competitions these days. What has happened, Rob?
Yeah, we've been chatting about doing this episode for a long while, haven't we? And I think we were a little bit concerned about how we should approach it, because obviously we are outside of this known very much as Rapier and Dagger fighters. We've had variable success in competitions, and we are going to say some critical things about competitions, and some people may feel it's sour grapes for us not progressing quite as much as we would have liked. But we're not entirely satisfied with it, particularly over the end of last year, are we?
No. It feels that something has happened with rapier, that people are I don't know, fighting a bit more linear, closer to each other. They don't care about the measure. They don't move as much, use the environment as much, and they are maybe cutting a little bit too much, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the cutting's an interesting one, because of course cutting is very much in rapier. It's wrong to think of the rapier as just a lunging weapon. That's where I think people are applying maybe sports fencing or small sword back. I don't know. I mean, certainly, my fights at Swordfish were quite shocking, and how I got through to the quarters, I don't know. And we were discussing this before we started, that I had a number of students who watched videos of me and were saying, "What the hell were you doing?" They were really unhappy with how I did it. But it's interesting when comparing it with the year before Swordfish. And indeed further back in the Loader era as well, when there was a lot of great quality Rapier and Dagger, some really beautiful plays. I don't know whether there's a lot more people who've done side sword or Messer or Saber or something, and they're coming in and are perhaps flailing a bit more. They're just having a go, but certainly the plays and the quality really did not come out at Swordfish, and I think for a little while beforehand there were quite a lot of people who were relying on speed and were prepared to take a hit, to give a hit, aiming to get the better quality hit to advance them. So yeah, it was not great.
No, I completely agree, and I think that the big thing is that we have a lot of people coming in from maybe side sword, saber, long sword, and start to just really like rapier, and that's great. But also the people who just gotten into rapier, maybe when you put them under pressure, they will tend to cut, because that's what their most that's where their biggest knowledge is, and they're used to do that more. So hopefully, if we give it a little time, people will start, and if people start attending workshops and seminars with really great rapier instructors and start having more regular rapier practice in their clubs, we will see kind of an upswing, so we get back on track. I think so. I hope so. So what do you think?
I think so. I think something notable as well is if you compare, in particular, highlighting that Swordfish competition, If you compare that with the longsword competition that was happening at the same event, the longsword competition had a real sense of joy about it, and people wanted to win, they wanted to do well, but there was a real a sense of joy, as I say. There was something a little more, I don't know whether it was chasing the medals or something like that, which was different to the longsword fight. And also the previous years, in 2014, you got to the final, with some beautiful fencing. You knocked me out at the semi certainly my favourite fight at the time, which was great fencing, great time if we are in trumpet. But also, I had a great time fencing with Christian in the runner-up one. And this is where we get accused of sour grapes because we did so well in that year. But there was a lot more fun there. So I don't know something about it. But there's something else we want to touch on, of course, with Rapier, is that people, I think, trying lots of different things in Rapier because it's a longer period. We're dealing with techniques from the 1550s, say, maybe a bit later, on through to the 18th century. So there's a wide variety of styles, and those styles use lots of different weapons. They're using actually lighter blades or heavier blades, longer, shorter, whatever. And a lot of that dictates the techniques that one might use. So it's perhaps a little more of a jumble. I don't know whether you'd agree with this, than you might see in, say, the longsword competitions.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think if you change a blade, if you change a rapier blade and make it kind of thinner and more narrow, it will definitely, you all of a sudden you can't cut with it at all. If you feel like, okay, you only want to do thrusting with it. But if you do the same with the longsword blade, if you take a longsword blade that is really good for half swording, and you can still, if you whack someone in the head with it, he will probably go down if he's not wearing armor. So I think rapier is, although it looks like you don't change that much, the change will be much bigger in rapier, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, certainly if you look at, say, the stuff that I'm doing in the Franco-Italian stuff at the beginning of the 17th century, end of the 16th, and compare that with Rada, early 18th century, Rada's much lighter, much faster. You can't use the same techniques. You just can't do it. It's such a development, but it is in many ways still rapier. So anyway, shall we have a look at this this video and see where we go?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so we're right at the beginning. We have Tish Cool as the referee. We've got Andres with the yellow socks on the right, Danny on the left, black socks.
Yes.
Okay.
Start moving in.
And immediately, you see Danny is moving from side to side trying to gain the blade.
Yeah. And Andreas stays put and attacks straight in, big steps.
Takes a lot of cuts in return there.
Yes, he did, and he got 1 point, but Daniel landed a thrust or a cut to the head. I didn't really see that, but we see again when they move in, Daniel starts moving to the sides, trying to find openings, and he's constantly moving his sword in and out, trying to provoke, trying to, just control the distance.
And he's covering the centre line very well. And you start to see a bit of a theme here with Andreas just going linear. And Danny is always ready to move backwards or more importantly sideways here. He's covering, and again we see another hit. And this is something else when we first looked at this. You see that Andreas is not using his dagger very much. He's not covering very well there.
No, I was coaching Andreas in this fight, and I also coached him in his pool, and he did really well. And he picked people apart, and he fought really great. And I think he was a little bit taken by fighting Daniel, because Daniel's style is completely different to the guys he met in the pool. So it's tricky when you go up against someone who has this style. I felt the same when I fought Daniel in the pool. He beat me quite easy, and it's it's a very, very tough experience if you go up to someone like that, on someone like that first time.
Again, I think this may be where there's, I don't know whether it's errors in the forms in which we're trying to follow or something here, but we see a default with Andreas fighting in a very linear style.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's Danny is more than prepared
Yeah.
to deal with this. And it may be, as you alluded to earlier, people are just defaulting to a linear fight, not using
Yeah.
space, not moving around.
No, yeah, I agree. And when you see Andreas when he attacks, Andreas is very tall. He's tall. I'm quite tall. Andreas is definitely taller than me, and when he attacks, he comes in with these long, big steps, and it turns it even more linear because he can't adjust if a mistake happen or something. He can't adjust to it and move in an angle or in a diagonal way. So that's. It's if it works and he lands a hit, it's really good. But if it doesn't work, he will get hit probably. So
yeah, those last two techniques there, you actually say, Andreas, I think basically starting to fold. What he's doing is he's starting to fall apart a little bit, I'd say there.
Yeah.
In that he doesn't have an answer, and you see that Danny is now pressing him. And he gets two thrusts very nicely placed to the center of Andreas's chest. Whereas beforehand, Danny was very much counter-fighting, just sussing out the enemy to that form there. And I'm sort of avoiding using the term the Spanish form because it's very easy to start generalizing about Italian Spanish forms and assume there's absolutely no contact between forms. But anyway, I digress. The danger to someone who is using Danny's form is that the long attack of the lunge, the fast extension that will get through before they have the time to do any form of parry or taho or anything in return. So Danny very much there, coming in, covering the blade and responding. And also, I'm going to steal something from what you were saying earlier. When Danny was making an attack or a counter, if the first thrust doesn't work, he immediately turns it into a cut. Any pressure on that blade, he's turning around and hitting it.
Yeah, and those cuts are actually really, really solid. He did the same thing on me when we were fighting, and it was really quick, and you can feel them pretty good actually on the arms and on the side here in the head. It was really fast, really quick. He was really good with that. I also have to say, Andreas is a very, very good rapier fencer. He did beautiful in his pool fights. If you want to see some nice moves from him, go to his pool fights and watch them. They're really good. The thing here was I don't think he was up to meet someone of Daniel's style. Actually, it was Daniel is a really good fencer. Very nice to see. Great footwork as well. You can see when Andreas moved in, he just jumped away and kept the distance perfectly. It was quite beautiful.
Yeah, and I think again this comes back to some of our longsword technique reviews that we've done. Footwork is key, and as you were saying, with the longer strides, the deeper commitment. I mean, when you make a lunge, you are very committed over the front leg, and it's something I've been discussing with other instructors, that there is a tendency to take the sports lunge, where you want to get that commitment to get as far as possible, and apply that to rapier or even small sword, where we're considering that it's likely the lunge is not quite as deep, or certainly not as committed, because you have to get out. And you know, we see the danger of the overcommitted lunge in this bout.
And if we look at, for instance, Fabrice, he doesn't have that kind of long. Capo Ferro has, you know, one of the first placing Capo Ferro has that lunge where he kind of really extends really far, and he's really deep, very tall, very long. Fabrice doesn't use that at all. He doesn't take that long step. He has control because he wants to be able to pull back or to defend himself. He doesn't want to lose control, I think. And
That's very true. The other thing to remember with Capoferro, of course, is in many instances he has his rear foot pointing backwards, which means that he can retire and lean backwards over that rear foot. What we're seeing in more of a competition setting is people are, hurtling forwards, and it's all about forward momentum to get the point through, all about getting in, and less concerned about covering on the way out. This is why, certainly for me, I'm more interested in passing attacks in many instances, because it allows me to walk things in and out. You mentioned Fabris is a great example of this.
And I think this is something that we have to stay away from in the rapier competitions in HEMA. Those, thrust when you kind of just throw everything you got forward and just to land that first hit. It's a suicidal attack, and you don't. If you will always end up with at least a dagger through your neck, and I mean it's not a good trade really.
Well, you mentioned the dagger, of course. We need to see a little bit more. I feel movement of the dagger with the rapier, moving them around one another, not just sort of wobbling it up and down there, but to actually see some of this overlapping work. I've had a number of sword and buckler people come to me and talk about the comparisons they find between sword and dagger and sword and buckler in the way that you move them in sympathy. You have to move them in sympathy. And the classic place to attack someone in Rapier and Dagger is straight down the line with open weapons. And again, I think that's some of the things that we were seeing with Danny going back on to Andreas, was that Andreas had his dagger often, fairly low, and he did attempt to get it up there on several occasions. But when in his attack, he wasn't moving things in sympathy. Maybe he wasn't covering the opponent's blade so well with the rapier and then the dagger. And so you see him open at that point. And consequently, as we're saying, Danny's shutting him down each time. Yeah.
You want to take a look at one or two exchanges again from the fight?
Yes, let's do that. I'll share my desktop again.
I think the first ones are quite good, actually.
Yeah. See there, actually, Andreas has got his dagger up and he's searching.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a hurtle, isn't it? He's just going for it.
It is. Yeah. And I know he landed a clean hit, Andreas, and in the second or third exchange, and I remember I told him do the same thing again. But I think Daniel kind of realized that no, I'm not going to go for that. So he and Andreas didn't find that little opening to go and do the same thing. So yeah, this was.
That's where he got it. He caught the hit just before break.
Yeah. And he again, the mental factor is so important in every fighting style. So this is the one I go up and say do the same thing again, do the same thing again. But then after a while, Daniel kind of takes over mentally as well, and you could see Andreas kind of starting to fall apart mentally. He didn't really find the right. Daniel had answers to everything, it seemed.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And you see that Andreas doesn't, and you see that he's getting closed down. I mean, he's still taking the tempo. He's not giving up. But just here, I think there's maybe been a little moment there.
And that's really hard. I mean, we have both felt that in competitions when you don't have an answer to anything, and everything you do is like shut down. It's like, oh, what am I going to do? I can't do anything. And you see, if you look at the scoreboard, points are kind of, going in completely not in your favor. Nothing works. It's really tough. And this is here are the last. I think these are the last exchanges here when Daniel kind of. You can see Daniel the way he moves.
When I fought Danny only in sparring, and the way and the thing is I'm hesitant in mentioning this because it's a completely different environment, because I had time obviously to play with it. The way in which I was able to shut down Danny was basically counterfight. Get him frustrated, let him try and find my sword, and then I would, cover with the dagger. And again, it's that using the weapons together.
Here's the last.
Yeah, you see again, and
nice. Sorry, you were saying.
I was just watching the end of it there, and you really do see someone completely closed down.
Yeah. And that's I think it's a nice example of styles first, and it's also a nice example of what we kind of want to see in rapier fencing. We want to see people use the whole arena, not just stand in this Mexican standoff when you kind of just to be as fast as possible. If I'm a little faster than my opponent, I will get the hit. It's that kind of fencing is suicidal, and I think I'm pretty sure Fabrice mentioned it. That's really, really dangerous, because if I do just one little mistake, even if even if I'm better, more experienced than my opponent, if I stand in a Mexican standoff, and if I do a little mistake, I might die, and that's it. So it's much better to move, trying to find the angles, trying to move the weapon together. And if it doesn't work that time, okay, back out, take your time. There's no rush really. So try to move a little bit more in angles, work with the weapons together. What more do we want to see?
Well, I think we need to actually see people using within the competition requirements the weapon that is appropriate to what they're trying to do. I think that there has been a drive to try and get the longest weapons possible, going right up to that sort of 45-inch blade. And that's all well and good, but certain advantages are lost. So the bind works in a slightly different way. You tend to need to have a lunge-orientated fight in many instances. You can't cut quite as well. These are huge generalizations, and there will always be counter-arguments to that. So I think perhaps people recognizing they need to use appropriate tools for the appropriate job.
Cool.
Okay.
All
right. So I think that probably concludes this now for our review of Rapier and Dagger techniques. I hope people will come back with some feedback, not too abusive, and what they think. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Cheers then.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.